since the first human heart quickened at a shadow. Fear has walked beside us, like a vigilant but overwhelming guardian. It speaks in the language of survival, whispering warnings, painting dangers, seeing threats in every unknown corner. Through ages carved in our very DNA, this sentinel has kept watch within every soul, speaking to both warriors and children, to explorers and homebodies, to all who have ever stood at the edge of their known world and felt the trembling at what lies beyond. Strain how this ancient protector can become our deepest prison. How the very warning system that kept us alive can keep us from living. How the guard at our gate can become the warden of our possibilities. Tonight, we enter the shadowed chambers of fear, not to banish this ancient guardian, but to understand its deeper wisdom. For in the very trembling of our fear lies a message about what we value. In its very warnings whisper truths about what we love. In fear's darkened corridors, every shadow seems to move. Every creak carries threat. Every unknown corner holds danger, until the very act of being becomes a constant vigilance, a midnight watch that never ends. See how fear paints the world in shades of threat, how it transforms possibilities into perils, how it colors every future with danger's dark hue, until the canvas of life becomes a gallery of potential disasters. The ancient ones knew that fear speaks in the oldest language of all, the tongue of survival, the dialect of defense, the primal poetry of protection. Yet, like all ancient tongues, it can sometimes speak in riddles too dark to serve us. Watch how this vigilant guardian never sleeps, how it scans horizons for danger, how it listens for footfalls of threat, how it tastes the air for tomorrow's storms, until the very gift of its protection becomes the burden of perpetual anxiety. Beneath fear's surface, all movement stops, like waters frozen in winter's grip. We become still, rigid, frozen, unable to flow, unable to move, unable to answer life's invitation to dance. Consider how fear creates its own cage of safety, how it builds walls of withdrawal, how it crafts armor of avoidance, how it designs prisons of protection, until the very structures meant to keep danger out life from getting in. The wise ones whisper that in fear's frozen realm, even breathing becomes shallow, as if by making ourselves smaller, quieter, less visible, we might escape the very life we are meant to live, the very adventures we are meant to have. In this frozen state, possibilities turn to ice. Dreams crystallize into untouchable forms. Hope hardens into brittle shapes until we become statues in our own lives, monuments to the safety we chose over the life we could have lived. In fear's twilight theater, shadows perform their endless dance, growing larger with each heartbeat, more menacing with each breath, until imagined dangers loom larger than any real threat ever could. Watch how fear's imagination paints masterpieces of disaster, how it crafts elaborate stories of what might go wrong, how it composes symphonies of possible catastrophe, each note tuned to the key of our deepest vulnerabilities. The mystery schools taught that shadows grow longest when we turn away from light, that monsters seem largest when we refuse to face them, that fears grow strongest in the soil of avoidance, until our very resistance feeds their dark growth. See how this shadow play draws all our attention, like a hypnotist's watch, like a siren's song, like a spell we cast upon ourselves, until the real world fades behind fear's dramatic performance, until possibility dims beneath probability's dark clouds. In this theater of shadows, we become both audience and playwright, creating and believing our own dark stories, directing and starring in our own fearful plays, until we forget that we hold the power to turn on the light. Strange truth, that even the bravest hearts know fear's trembling. That courage wears not a face of fearlessness, but a face of fear acknowledged, fear embraced, fear transcended. The ancient warriors knew that the shaking of hands before battle held wisdom, that the quickening of breath before challenge carried power, that fear's energy, properly channeled, could fuel rather than freeze. Consider how fear and excitement share the same physical song, the same racing heart, the same quickened breath, the same heightened awareness. Only the mind's interpretation draws the line between terror and thrill. In this understanding lies liberation's seed. For in seeing fear not as enemy, but as ally, not as weakness, but as wisdom, not as cowardice, but as energy, we begin to transform its very nature within us. Behind fear's dark mask, a messenger waits to be heard, not speaking of danger alone, but of what we value, what we love, what we are not yet ready to lose. Listen to how fear maps the territory of our caring, how it outlines the boundaries of our heart's investments, how it traces the shape of our soul's attachments, until we see that what we fear to lose reveals what we love most deeply. The wise ones understood that fear carries wisdom in its warnings, that its messages, though often garbled, though often overwhelming, though often misunderstood, contain seeds of truth about our deepest values. Watch how nature uses fear to guide rather than govern, how animals honor its warnings without becoming paralyzed, how trees bend before storms without ceasing to grow, how rivers respect obstacles without stopping their flow, teaching us that fear can inform without imprisoning. Deep in the laboratory of the heart, fear can undergo a sacred transformation, like lead becoming gold, like coal becoming diamond, like darkness giving birth to dawn. Fear's raw energy awaits its conversion. See how fear's power can be transformed, but never destroyed. How its vigilance can become awareness. How its warnings can become wisdom. How its energy can become excitement. How its caution can become discernment. The ancient alchemists knew that transformation requires first acceptance, not the denial of our fears, but their deep acknowledgement, not their banishment, but their integration, not their conquest, but their conversion. In this sacred work, every trembling holds purpose. Every anxiety carries potential. Every fear contains fuel. For the very energy that freezes us can become the force that frees us. In the soil of fear, courage takes root and blooms, not as fearlessness, but as fear's flowering, not as absence of trembling, but as presence within it, not as elimination of doubt, but as action despite it. Watch how nature teaches courage's quiet way, how seeds push through dark earth, how buds open despite frost's threat, how birds leave nests despite height's peril, each acting not without fear, but within it, the wisdom keepers taught that courage grows not in fear's absence, but in its presence, like flowers blooming in winter, like stars shining in darkness, like love growing in loss, each finding strength not despite vulnerability, but through it. In this garden of becoming, fear and courage dance together, each informing the other, each strengthening the other, each completing the other, until they become not opponents, but partners in our growth. There comes a morning when fear no longer rules the kingdom of our hearts, not because it has been vanquished, but because it has been understood, not because it has been conquered, but because it has been integrated, like stars yielding to sunrise. Fear's shadows begin to soften, not disappearing completely, but taking their proper place, not dominating our sky, but becoming part of our wholeness. The mystical ones shared that freedom comes not from fearlessness, but from fear's proper placement, not from its absence, but from its balance, not from its death, but from its wise counsel properly heard. Watch how dawn comes not by fighting darkness, but by bringing more light. How spring comes not by battling winter, but by growing through it. How courage comes not by killing fear, but by dancing with it. And so we stand, neither ruled by fear nor free from it, but walking with it as an ancient companion, a wise counselor, a transformed guardian, no longer its prisoner, but its student, no longer its victim, but its alchemist, free at last to live, not without fear, but beyond its governance, in the dawn of a larger courage, in the light of a deeper wisdom, in the freedom of a more complete humanity.